Welcome to Beers with Contractors. We're cracking a cold one and taking a deep dive into the foundations of your business, pun intended, to unearth the strategies, techniques, and insider knowledge that can take your contracting business to the next level. So, grab your favorite beer, pull up a seat, and let's have a chat about the nuts and bolts of the construction industry.
Listeners, because we're up to 3 now, I've got a very important announcement. It is Dylan's birthday today.
Woo! Let's go.
At old age of 32.
32 years old today. Yep. It's a weird birthday. 30 was kind of momentous. Feel like you're going somewhere. 31's a little weird. You're just like, well, that's a lame one. And then 32, it's just like, all right, I think this is going to continuously be a little weird every year. It's just not the same as, 21, 25, 30. And at least I'm not inching closer to my 40s. That would be scary.
We'll celebrate that here in a little bit. The interesting thing about that is you have a child now, which your birthdays are going to matter like very little in the future. So get used to it. It's a great journey. So happy birthday, Dylan.
I appreciate it.
And, first off, to everybody listening, we have been out of practice for a while. I know you've been listening to us every week, but we've been traveling. Gosh, I have felt like a gypsy the last few weeks. Been onboarding a lot of companies on our software and just bouncing around from South Dakota to Richmond to Vegas so I am feeling the beers today.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier before the episode started, and it's just nice for you to be home and what it means to sleep in your own bed at night.
Oh, man. It is great. It's way better sleeping in your own bed than crashing on the couch of some hotel suite after partying with a construction company on a Tuesday. But we had a great time.
I'm sure it was a highly educational conference that you were at. That's what everyone was there for.
Got to experience a contractor using ChatGPT in their interviewing process, which was pretty unique. Actually, the Ogburn brothers that were on a podcast a little while ago using ChatGPT, that was pretty wild. Got to see a scrappy team up in South Dakota, producing, oh my gosh, like 13% net profit and over 3 offices, probably one of the most lean indirect overhead teams I've ever seen, called Blackburn Foundation Repair. Awesome company. But anyway, it's been a while. We're a little out of practice. So what you got, Dylan?
Yeah, so we're kind of thinking of the rising generations. And I think this is just a crazy kind of change of times for us as the rising generations come into the construction workforce. What's that going to be the impact for us? The other week, I was meeting with one of the companies that we meet with, and one of their sons was with us, and he was a 15-year-old, excuse me. And he had gotten his driver's license, but he doesn't drive at all. And so we got to talking. We're like, well, why do you not want to drive? And he's like, no, basically I don't want to drive. And why do I need to? I have a ride anywhere and it's all set up for me. Plus I don't have to pay for gas. Like, why would I do it? And it took me back to a conference that we had been at together where someone had kind of talked about the generational differences in the way that they see driving. Do you remember how that went?
I remember this. This is crazy.
Yeah. And so basically the speaker was portraying the difference of generations. And he asked this crowd, and imagine this crowd is largely sort of like middle-aged and older. And so they've been there for this question. And the question was, when you turned 16 and you were going to go get your license, what was the one word that could describe that feeling of you getting your license?
And I bet they said, well, freedom, because that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Is like, I'm free. You can leave the house.
Right. I have things to do, and like, mom and dad, you're holding me back. Like, I'm free. I have a car. Like, I can go do things.
And the fact is, we didn't have shit to do.
Right. There was nothing going on. Like, you're going to go drive down Main Street or something. So that was like an overwhelming response. Everyone in the crowd is like, freedom, right? And he's like, now the difference of your generation and the generation today, if you ask the exact same question to a 15 or 16-year-old today, and I did it with this owner's son, I said, what's the one word that comes to your mind when you think about getting your driver's license? He said, responsibility. And you're like, wow, that is a cataclysmic shift in humanity to see something that's like freeing and I'm going to go out and get my own to responsibility and I might shirk away from it. And so I thought it'd be interesting just kind of talk about what we might think the impact of that is. And, some of the things you don't really get to change. You just have to live with it and you need to adapt to overcome. So, yeah.
Well, when you told me about that story, which is a great client of ours in Unison, Sybil, that owns Pros Make Ready, very unique business. And what's her grandson's name that was there? Kate. Awesome kid. I went to my 11-year-old and asked the same thing, and his word was commitment. It wasn't freedom. It was like, it's kind of like signing a contract for continuing cost in my life. That's my words, not his, but it makes you kind of like think, oh, wow, like that's wildly different. We see this in the trades. Like we've had laptops and computers like for most of our career, or call it working life, but most of our employees, they don't have computers. It's just like, why would I own a $1,500 computer when I can, you've heard me say this, when I can screenshot to any one of the televisions in your office? So, I mean, that's one of those things that's just like, there's a massive dynamic shift that, well, I love to push against this. The people that are like, no one wants to work and things like that. It's like, no, you just haven't found the right way to communicate with those said individuals. So that the fact that you bring that up is a huge topic that I think it all comes down to empathy, right? Of understanding, well, how does this individual perceive the world around them? And how do you understand that to make sure that you get the best results out of that individual? So, I mean, what advice would you give to, say, a contractor out there that's bringing on this new generation that doesn't want to have a driver's license? Which, by the way, that may not be the vast majority, but the fact is there's a pretty sizable part of our market that we're competing against other industries in to get new talent. And there's a lot of people that are thinking that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. I'll answer this maybe on a personal level and then on a professional level. I think on a personal level, any young person that we're around, just like instilling that responsibility can be a good thing. It is a good thing. And I think as like a business culture, yeah, that's the same sort of climate. Like, don't be afraid of the promotion because it will be more responsibility. But like, let me help train you and ensure that like you feel you're going to have the continued guidance with that promotion, right? With that additional responsibility. So just kind of pushing back on the narrative, because I think internally the young person says to themselves like responsibility is a bad thing, right? But no, it can be a good thing. But I think as a company, what you have to do is create a culture that says, we understand there's going to be responsibilities with this role, but we're going to make sure that you feel equipped. Because I think the commitment side of that answer is, I don't think I know enough. I don't think I'm prepared enough. I think I'm going to do something wrong and I'm going to mess it up and it's going to be really bad. And that's probably going to be the fear for someone coming into your company, where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of responsibility in X, Y, and Z construction, but we're going to be with you. Like we want you to be trained and equipped, and we're going to show you all the ins and outs so that you can be successful.
Yeah. Well, weird segue. So I've been traveling a lot and I've been living the airport lifestyle. So not knowing that you were going to bring this up today, I literally, in my boredom at spending 2.5 hours on a layover, I ran the math to be like, hey, if I didn't own a vehicle and have to pay insurance, because property and casualty insurance has gone up tremendously, I was like, and I just Uber to work back and forth every day, what would it cost me related to owning a vehicle? Because of the proximity, I live 24 minutes from my office. So it wasn't cost advantageous to me. But if I lived within 10 minutes of my office with, what's it called? Uber Pool? When you carpool with people, it actually came out to about a $50 difference per month. And I was like, that's interesting. Now, if you're living in the rural parts of, say, Kentucky, that's probably not, a good strategy. But if you're living in a major metropolis and you're close proximity to your workplace, then yeah, it would make sense. Like, I'm not going to own a vehicle because I have a commitment. It's not exactly freedom, right? Because it's a cost that drags you down. And of course, a lot of people associate, I think the reason they associate driver's license with commitment and responsibility is you're tying it to debt, right? And that's the big issue. But just wild ways to think. And honestly, that I think that would probably be the lesson here is when I heard that, rather than arguing against him, be like, oh, you just don't know what the way the world works. I was like, all right, well, let's reverse engineer the math here and let's see what they think. And I was like, actually, that's pretty damn smart. And when you can look at that thinking and respect or admire the good parts about that thinking, it kind of opens your brain a little bit and be like, okay, cool, I can relate to this individual. And by the way, it's way easier to hire and motivate those individuals when you know the way they think. So, and that's why, I don't know, you remember, what's the amount of Gen Zs that are in our company currently by percentage? It's over 60.
Yeah, it's really high. I mean, it's definitely the majority of employees.
Yeah, and that's our advantage. I think it's a value proposition in our marketplace. Now, we don't advertise to our customers like, hey, we employ 60-something% of Gen Zs. Well, really what it says is like, hey, by the way, the reason we can respond to you so quickly on a text message is because we have 62% Gen Zs.
Is it to our advantage for sure?
Oh, yeah. And we could even get to the statistics on how many text messages can be delivered in a day by a Gen Z. It's in Jason Dorsey's book, but it's nuts how many digital kind of interfaces and text messages can be sent out of one device from a Gen Z. It's nuts. So,
and not to beat a dead horse, but I would just say that, like, I do think this will be a major obstacle, like a big challenge for the future of construction, because if you think of a culture of a future generation that does look at something and says this is responsibility, there's a piece of like fear there instead of like a liberation mindset of freedom, right? And so it's like, how do you respond to that in construction and say like, no, there's like reasonable fears, like there are accidents that happen in construction, right? But like that's not day to day. Most construction companies don't experience anything more than like, little cuts and stuff, and so you've got to liberate that fear. And I think again, kind of coming back to address the elephant in the room, that it's not just responsibility and something to be afraid of, but it is something that we're proud of and we know that you can succeed in.
Yeah, well, cool. Full disclosure, listener, we typically prep for this topic, and because we've been behind the times, I had no clue what we were going to talk about, and then Dylan just threw that out there, and there you go. So if you think that went smooth, I think it's like riding a bike.
Yeah, we're getting it figured out. But if you have other topics that you guys want to hear about or hear our thoughts on, like throw them in the comments. We'd love to.
Yeah. Speaking of comments, our guest today was inspired by a comment from one of our past guests. I didn't realize how much of a raving group of followers this guy has. He's got like 3 or 4 disciples. He's got, how many were there? 12? Yeah, 12. He's got to work. So he's got some to go. But so our guest today, it's funny. I'm going to read directly from the Google form that I send out here. So this gentleman here by the way, I consider a very good friend of mine. He's a drinking buddy. So when I was like, hey, you want to be on our podcast? He's like, it's just another day for us. So our guest today oversees 2-year associate programs at Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma City. And different from our other guests, full disclosure, Ben Bigelow was our other guest that inspired Harry's appearance here. So he helps students preparing to enter the commercial and residential construction industry. Got started in 2009. I want to get into that a little bit more, so I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But landed in Oklahoma from North Central Florida without a job. Now he's a professor. We're gonna peel back the layers. Hey, and figured it was a good place to land up during a recession.
Hey, education is pretty recession-proof.
Yep, they gave it 2 years and back in the industry 15 years late, but I'm still here. His words, not mine. Any recent accolades or recognitions or awards? Nope. That was his response. And of course, we're going to find out about how to get in contact with my good friend, Terry Clinefelter, and is also part of the board of my construction camp, which I hope we get to talk about today. But Terry Clinefelter, welcome to the podcast, buddy. Just like another Tuesday hanging out with beers. How you doing, man?
Hey, doing good. Happy to be here.
Hey, by the way, we just started filming and just got to it. We didn't tell you, did you get plenty of refills?
Oh, I can probably reach the fridge.
Okay. Well, if you need to, let us know. We'll give you
Yeah, I'll be a runner for you.
So, by the way, Terry, love you, man. We obviously know each other really well. Love drinking beer together. And sorry, you did suggest whiskey today, but I wanted us to be able to enunciate our words because I feel like Terry and I can probably toe-to-toe on beer, not on whiskey. Doesn't work that way for me.
Well, it's funny. Will was showing me he's like, yeah, look at this thread of text between me and Terry. And it's like, he just barely scrolls through it. And there's like 3 pictures of drinks. And it's like, Terry is sad that he's having a drink by himself and not with Will. And I was like, all right, this is good. We got to make this happen. So,
yeah. I still loathe those because it's always after a long, hard day. And then Terry sends me a picture of, hey, I'm drinking someplace and I didn't invite you.
And it's probably about like 2 or 3 in the afternoon too. So
Actually, no, you're good. They're typically like 3:30 to 4:30. So you're good. But Terry, welcome to the podcast, buddy. So let's go ahead and express your title better than I did.
Oh, no, you did good. So I'm the department head for the construction technology program at Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma City. We're a 2-year technical college, and we do 2-year associate's degrees, right to industry. So a lot more technical education, a lot less general education.
Yeah, and Ben, who we had a few episodes ago, we work closely, just you, him, and I. But while his program is very robust and more degree driven, I love your program because it's I hate to use the word blue collar, but it's like is it certificate driven the right way to say it?
So we have both 2-year associate's degrees and certificates, and most of our certificates are embedded. So that means you get a certificate, you can work towards your associate's degree. We try and respond to industry as quickly as the needs change. And so you'll see that our coursework differs than that of a traditional 4-year institution. You'll also see that our student demographics differ pretty significantly. Our associates, our AAS degrees, Associates of Applied Science, they'll have 18 hours of general education, and then everything else is supposed to help you get that next job, career, advancement. And so we have the ability to deliver quality education to students who are able to access career pathways, but we can do it in half the time and for significantly less money.
Yes, I deliberately dropped out of college because of all the core classes. It's like I just want to design and draw stuff and be an architect, but you're sitting here teaching me English 103, and it's like I'm not going to be Shakespeare, right? And I oh my gosh, I hated it. So that's what you're meaning by this is like you're not having to push students through like these core classes. And by the way, that's not knocking Ben or any university. It's just my personal preference. So
no, we do have the general education requirements that basically say any graduate from a college has this base level of understanding, right? But what we try and do is make sure that the technical classes, they're sprinkled in with that general education so that as soon as you come in, you're able to start gaining knowledge and gaining an understanding that's going to affect you right then and there. And that's the nice thing about the program that I oversee, the construction program. The majority of students are non-traditional. I mean, I'm not getting those 18-year-old kids straight out of high school. The majority of my kids, the average age is somewhere in like 27 years old.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
You know, they are a full-time anything else and then a part-time student typically. And so, you know, I got kids working 40-hour weeks. They're doing service-related jobs. They're waiters, they're servers, they're stockers. I have folks who are in industry. You know, they're foremen or they're laborers or they're estimators, and they're all working their way towards that next step for them. And so the education that they're receiving, it helps them to get to that point. And that's the enjoyment. You know, it's not walking into a classroom and seeing a whole bunch of kids who were just last year in high school. All of these kids have been, you know, they've been bounced around a little. You know, life's taken a shot at them, and they're a full-time something else, part-time student, and that makes them a lot more interesting to teach, but it also makes it a lot more demanding because you better respect their time because they're making a sacrifice, and it's usually taken away from their pocketbook or their family.
Well, and that's why I love it, because I came from kind of this just bare bones, like, hey, you got a job at 14, not because I'm asking you to have a job at 14 to teach a work ethic. I needed a job at 14 to help pay bills at the house, right? And, I love that the fact that you said, like, you got to respect their time just as much as others. But the fact is, when we hear, like, OSU or a U in any title, standing for university, we think it's like, oh no, you're paying to be here. But I love this because we talked about this a few years ago, just this whole shift. Your program is so wrapped around like, hey, we are going to teach you the skill, but what do you want out of the skill, right? Like, what's it going to do for your life? And that's just like, hell yeah, that's like my style. That's why Terry and I get along. That's why we love to drink beer together. So what landed you here other than, hold on, we got to rewind a little bit because I got to hear this story. Going from Florida to here, take us back through that. We got to hear the Forrest Gump version.
So born and raised in outside of Gainesville, Florida, did 4 years up at Florida State in a business degree. I did my master's work after I graduated, about a year after that, down at the University of Florida, and the whole time working jobs in construction. So managed a wood shop, was a facilities manager for a bar and nightclub, worked for an architect.
I forgot, you told me about the bar and the nightclub story. That's going to come back up here in a little bit because you got some good tokens from that one.
No, so go through grad school at University of Florida in construction, something I'd always wanted to be in, but, was never really, my father was a lifelong cabinet maker, so I grew up in the trades. And then he was dead set on me doing anything other than going into the trades. And so I figured that by the time I got a master's degree, he might be able to get into that skill set or career pathway. And so I'm about to graduate and the bottom drops out of the construction. So you had like condos and apartments that were, 3/4 of the way done, selling for like 30 cents on the dollar. Stupid stuff. And I'm looking at graduating and dating my girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife, and she's from Oklahoma, and she kind of wanted to move back. And I was like, well, I don't really want to move without a job. So I came out here and was kind of looking around, interviewing actually with industrial commercial contractors, and looked, and OSU-OKC had a job opening for actually an instructor. So I went in, like, just kind of walked in off the street, kind of had a conversation with the dean at that time, and ended up interviewing later that week. And then they extended a job offer. Well, the second interview, I was actually driving from Florida to Oklahoma. And so did a second interview over the phone in a Walmart parking lot.
Oh, at least you were smart enough to park.
Yeah, it was classy at that point.
This was before FaceTime, right?
Oh, yeah.
Wait a minute, where are you, and what is that weird person in the back with a shopping cart?
Well, don't worry. I was probably scaring most of the people in the parking lot at that point. But figured, hey, I'll be here for 2 years. It will be a good place to kind of hold up while everything sorts itself out in the economy. And then 15 years later, I'm still here.
The economy is still getting sorted out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so the real question is, Terry, what law did you break to be sentenced to 50? I'm just joking. But no, that is so funny that I could poke at you because you're a good friend of mine and be like, when you can't do, you teach. Isn't that the saying?
No, what's even worse is that, my wife's a commercial project manager. So it's not just that I teach, that she gets to do this day in and day out. So, and all my friends are in the trades or in the industry. And so no one lets me live that down. Trust me.
I gotta ask. So, everyone around you is in the trades, and your wife's in the role she's in. So, like, what you know. What keeps you in education? What do you do to feel that draw?
So, great thing about working in education, you get a lot of free time, but you also get very low pay. So what that allows us to do.
You're really selling me on this, right?
I know. Hey, It's great benefits. So,
Will, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to go work in education.
but my wife and I we own a real estate. We own rental properties and manage and buy, fix up. And so that's kind of like my creative outlet. And we've been doing that for 14 years. So it's something that allows me to keep like 1 foot in the industry, 1 foot in the trades, and then, go back, work my hard, 35 hours a week at the university. But the fact is I get to probably affect more individuals going into these career pathways being there at the university. And being there for 15 years, I mean, I've seen some really amazing students come through those doors, and then I get to see them out there in industry now, and they've been out 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and they're senior superintendents or they own their own business, and, they're knocking it out of the park. And, they are, light years ahead of wherever they thought they would be when they started that program. And so that's really a good feeling. And then when you run into them at the bar, they buy you beer.
Oh,
and that's even better.
Love that feeling in my stomach.
Yeah.
But then they run it on a credit card. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Well, I think it's super cool that your students tend to be a little bit older than traditional college age. And I just imagine that the kinds of questions that they ask are way more real world. Like they've been there a little bit. They've kind of seen some things versus someone who's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed out of high school and maybe just hasn't seen some real life experiences and just don't understand how what they're learning in the classroom is going to apply outside.
Oh, no. I mean, you talk with a 18-year-old kid coming out of high school, and you tell them something about the industry or why something is the way it is, and they're just like, they're smiling at you, they're taking notes, and they're just nodding, right? And then you tell, because my average age is 27, that means I got folks older. So I tell, I got 30s, 40-year-old folks who have been in the industry for 10, 15 years, and you tell them something like, that's not how we do it. And so you get into it with them, and not in a negative way, but you have that discussion and you explain, this is how industry approaches it. This is why industry does it this way. These are the pros, these are the cons. And then you talk about it. And probably the best part is, I'll be talking with my students on a Wednesday night. We'll be going over something. And then the following week, I have a student who's in industry come back and he's like, hey, I applied what you said, or I used this that I picked up in class and it saved me this amount of money. And so it's a direct cost benefit at that point in time. They're seeing a return on their investment. And, a 2-year associate's degree, we are one of the lower cost options for education. I mean, it's not a 4-year college. We don't have residence halls. We don't have a lot of the additional costs, but the payoff for those individuals is very significant and it's very immediate.
Well, so let me rewind a little bit. Love that you guys have, and we've talked about this home. Terry, go ahead and get you a beer, buddy. I told you were going to need a refill. Terry and I, man, we can pound for pound take beers. You want another one?
No.
That you and your wife had done this real estate thing together, but you told me this story that you obviously want to own assets and you want to, have properties that you can rent, but your real value is having your kids go out there and actually build stuff with you, which is funny because you're a father of daughters, right? And you're like, it's not fully about the ROI. It's about we get to I'm teaching them the value of working with your hands and actually showing what your value's worth. So kudos there, because you did not mention that in your description of it. So back to your students, because you're working with folks that a lot of us as the contractors / employers are looking for every day. And you're directly dealing with the mindset of those individuals. So what would you, I guess, recommend to the general contractor, the niche home services contractor out there in dealing with these types of individuals to say, hey, listen, this is the mindset you're going to deal with. It may not be your choosing, but it's the reality that you're dealing with, because many of which are coming with financial struggles and things like that. Long-winded question, go.
So, I mean, if I look at the student demographic I'm looking at, so I'm getting a lot of the young kids I'm seeing, they understand cost and they understand debt and they don't want it. And it kind of ties into what you were looking at. They're very responsible. The reason they don't want debt is they saw their parents struggle in '08, right? So they were at that demographic. They were at that age when they saw their parents struggling with debt out of '08. And so they take that, and they saw mom and dad had a 4-year degree. They saw mom and dad had student debt, and they saw mom and dad struggle. And so my kids who are coming through, they're working a full-time job, and a lot of them are full-time students to pay for it. And it's a hard conversation to have with them when you're telling them, hey, you know, there's scholarships, there's opportunity, this is important, you need to make sure you're investing your time. And they're like, hey, I got to put food on the table, I got to pay rent, I got to pay for my own school because I'm not taking debt. The majority of my students that come through, they don't take debt. Even if they do, 2-year degree, books, fee, tuition, all out the door is right around $15,000. And so you're looking at a pretty pretty quick payoff when they go out and get the job offers they're getting. You know, and so they're a lot more responsible. The other thing I'd tell contractors that are looking at any of my students is all these kids have busted their rear ends while they're in school, right? They're not going home after class. They're not sleeping late. They're not, you know, just going out living it up. They're going back to work. And so I talk with these kids as they're making their resumes, and they're like, should I put this job on my resume? It's not in industry. I'm like, you want to tell that contractor that you worked a 40-hour week while you were a full-time student, because what that's going to tell them is that you can handle a lot. You can perform, you can excel, and you can show up. And that's what any of them want to see. And so those contractors, I mean, the kids that I'm seeing in our program's different. I mean, we deal with a lot of first-generation students. Our programs are somewhere around a little bit less than 40% Hispanic, a very non-traditional demographic in terms of age, and it makes for a great graduate, great employee. And the contractors that have bought in, that's kind of how I judge if I'm producing a product that the industry is liking. They'll come back time and again. These smaller contractors who come back and hire every couple of years to pick up that next person, and they still have the ones that they hired. I look at, you know, AC Owens, SRB, a lot of these different contractors or engineers around, and I can name a handful of students in each one of those organizations. And they're not huge organizations, but the students are out there being a great resource for them.
Well, and I'm a home service guy, and we've got, you know, one of our 3 listeners is a home service person. But you're not just focusing on just that industry. I mean, you guys train line. I think that's probably one of your robust programs there is electrical and like high, what's it called?
So it's high voltage or a power line.
Yeah, it's crazy because our office is located near your campus, and I drive by and these guys are like shimmying up poles like lemurs, and they're like putting on insulators. I'm like, good luck to you, because I'm scared of heights. But like there's some major focus programs now that just don't deal with home services. They bleed over into it. But what are the major programs that you have there?
So the campus has, you know, we have our nursing program, fire, police, EMT, a lot of those health programs, human service, but business, management, accounting, you know, we have engineering. We have probably one of the better surveying programs nationwide, all online. So the surveying program is wholly online. Right now, running 153 students. 40% of them are out of state, right? So we have students in 19 different states this semester. We have the lineman program, which is pushing students out. That's going to OG&E, PSO, OEC, any of those high voltage utility contractors. There's so many different programs that are filling those needs and more coming on. There's a biotech program. There's an engineering, manufacturing program coming online, computer science. I mean, that campus is set up to benefit industry, and that's what it was brought down here to do.
Yeah, and it's not like, when I think of surveying, I think like, here's how you set up a transit and how you look through a scope. It's not. It's like insanely GPS driven now, which we'll get to here in a second. Like Gen Alpha is completely in tuned to this stuff. Not so. But yeah, it's crazy what you're doing. And back to the tuition. So many of you that have listened, all three of you that have listened, know that I'm from North Carolina. I had my niece apply to a North Carolina university, and it was going to be something, I don't know, $23,000 a semester in state. And we're like, you should probably look at OSU. And it was like 14 out of state for a 4-year degree. She was going for a 4-year degree. So I'm shocked at just the cost that you've been able to facilitate just the degree aspect, but not only that, the certificate aspect. It's like, yeah, that's just what we do. So speaking of which, one of the reasons Terry is on our podcast today is because he was, humble enough to jump into this weird little venture that we've been dealing with. Many of you have heard about the construction camp for kids, and we decided to create a construction camp for 7th and 8th graders. It's a summer camp where they come and they learn about the trades. We could not find a facility, and one of Terry's biggest regrets was standing up and saying, hey, you can just come do it at our facility. Did your boss know that you...
Well, it's always better to ask forgiveness than permission. I've learned over my 15 years.
We need to put that like a mantra on the wall.
Are you sure you want 12 and 13-year-olds on the campus? Like,
no. I mean, the fact of the matter is if you've been around or in construction for any amount of time, what you realize is there's a staffing shortage, right? We don't have enough people coming into these trades, this industry, to replace the people who are leaving. Every contractor, every owner understands that. Not everyone wants to do anything about it, right? And so when was it? 3 years ago, when a group that got started asked if the campus would be involved, if we wanted to take part in trying to change this, I think the only answer that could be had was yes, because it is a significant benefit to our industry. It allows young people to understand career pathways that are otherwise not going to be available to them because no one's there to show them. If you think about it, a lot of us in the trades are in the trades because someone we knew in our lives was in it. A father, an uncle, a brother, a mother, someone, right? The kids that we see in the camps, they don't have someone like that. And so if the camp and the industry does not promote that career pathway to these young people, they're not going to know what's available. And everyone who's listed, most likely, who's in the industry, understands this is a great career path. It puts food on the table. You can take pride in your work, and you enjoy doing it. And you do it with people that you enjoy being around. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it is worth it.
if you guys could, obviously you've both been a part of this construction camp. It's going into its 3rd year. Is that right? It's going into its 3rd year. Paint the picture for me, because I've never been.
But it's really bad that we call it construction camp because it just rolls off the tongue. But it's called Construct My Future.
Construct My Future. So paint the picture. What is the time frame? What do the teenagers do? What does that look like?
Hold on, I'm going to let Terry answer this question, but let me tell you a funny story. So we started our first camp, and Terry, obviously, he looks like a stereotypical construction guy, contractor, right? And we're like, hey, because you play the part, we want you to be the guy that's in front of all the kids. And then, Terry was off trying to get something ready the first day of our very first camp. And we're like, where's Terry? Where's Terry? And the kids are starting to get rambunctious and out of control. And they're like, Will, go deal with these kids. and like get them all in order. And I all of a sudden got voluntold to be the ringleader. And now on our third year, now I'm the professional cat herder, which by the way, has been great. It's been completely fulfilling. But Terry, knowing that, and I let you off the hook a little bit, you can give your description of the camp not having to deal with 80 7th and 8th graders running around like mad people.
I don't know. I mean, so the camp's grown and grown in size, and we've had some great industry partners. We've had some who have been with us all 3 years or going into our third. We have some that are new each year that come on. The idea of interacting with 7th and 8th graders in large groups is challenging, to say the least. What you have to understand is that the preconceived notions that you have about what these kids are going to be interested in, what they're going to gravitate to, let's put a VR headset on them. Let's get them in this virtual world. Now they have enough of that, right? Let's give them the tactile sensation of driving nails. Let's let them drive screws. Let's let them weld. Let's let them braze. Let's let them do all these things that, as someone who's facilitating the camp on their campus, makes me exceptionally nervous, right? Oh, hey, we got this, 7th and 8th grader holding a brazing torch. What could go wrong? The fact that these kids are being able to work around industry professionals, and then they step, on Wednesday, they go out to the job sites. They'll go tour an ideal home neighborhood. They'll go walk a J.E. Dunn job site. They'll go to the Department of Transportation testing facility. They go and see what is actually happening. And they get to talk with industry professionals who look like them, who are from the same communities as they are. And all of them are saying, yes, come into this industry. You're more than welcome. And we want you to be here. That's huge. And it's, kids are going to be kids, and you're at times going to be driven up a wall, and you just kind of like, okay, let's go find a counselor, and I'll see you next tomorrow, and it's all going to be better. But at the end of the week, when the parents come in, industry partners come in, and we have a lunch where we are celebrating what these kids have done. And these kids have done a lot more than a lot of adults out there, right? They actually know proper names for tools. They've operated equipment that, the majority of adults I know haven't ever gotten to operate. They've been introduced or at least exposed to these career pathways in a way that I don't think I've ever seen represented anywhere else. And the parents are so thankful, because the parents know that a career pathway in construction is worthwhile. It is financially stable, but they don't know how to introduce their kids. These are parents who are working service jobs or minimum wage jobs, and they know they want their kid to have a career. We're not introducing them to jobs. We're introducing them to careers. And you see the kids, and the kids that come back year after year, we're playing the long game on a lot of this stuff. We're dealing with 7th and 8th graders. I'll see them maybe in 5-6 years if they stay on the track. And I think the key to the camp, which, OSU-OKC, a 2-year college, takes part. OU, a 4-year construction program, takes part. The career tech takes part. All of these institutions are saying, you don't have to get a 2-year, you don't have to get a 4-year, you don't have to just go to a career tech, just go. Get into the industry. Whatever path you want to take is the right path for you. We're going to be here to help you and support you to try and get you into that industry. But just go. The industry wants you.
One thing that this kind of strikes a chord with the beginning of this episode too, I'm a big fan of AR. Like, virtual reality is interesting, it's fun, but like there's also actual reality, and you can just go out and do it, right? And like this campus, it's, as you described it in some of the pictures and videos I've seen, it's like, yeah, we're going to give them the tools that otherwise they may not have at home, or they don't even know that they could use. And I think coming back to the beginning of this episode, we talked about the difference of perspective between freedom and responsibility. I would imagine probably the older generation experienced freedom with their driver's license, because probably 3 years before they got their license, they were already driving a car. So it wasn't that scary. So like, yeah, now I'm free to go do what I was already doing, right? And probably some of the youth of today weren't given a hammer when they were 10 years old to go help their mom or dad on this little project on the house, right? And so this is like an introduction to them. And like part of freedom and responsibility is you have to learn some responsibility before you feel free to do it well. Like when I was a kid, I tried to learn piano. It was like I had to learn what note was what before I could ever be good enough to just like try to play something on my own, right? To be free to play something on my own. And so this is like a great avenue to just introduce children to a little bit of the taste and see, this is a real opening for them.
Well, this is a great segue for Terry, and it's not our final question, but you are absolutely right. Like many of these student campers they've had the Gen Alpha is what we're speaking about specifically. They have had a screen in front of them since they were old enough to hold the screen. And so when we introduce them to something very kinesthetic, they are like, whoa, this is nuts. And what happens from that is like, and if you can gamify it, this generation is going to be awesome. And I know somebody's listening out there like, oh, these kids don't want to work. And I'm like, dude, you have a wave coming towards you. And if you're not ready for it, like, and you're not ready to look for it, it's just intense. So I'll never forget the very first day of our very first camp, we had a nail driving competition that Terry had to drive. And he stands up. How tall are you, Terry?
6'3".
What'd you imagine a bunch of 7th and 8th graders? And then Terry, he looked like Groot in front of all these kids. And he's like, by the way, this is a hammer. And I don't know, what was it, a 22-ounce hammer or something?
Yeah, it's a framing hammer.
And we're going to have a nail driving competition. And he cut a bunch of telephone posts so you could nail into the grain. And he's like, and we're going to practice hammering these 16 penny nails. Bam, bam, bam. And he showed them and they were like, whoa, this is cool. And it wasn't like a split second. They all grabbed their hammer, just beating the hell out of these telephone posts. And then, well, we ran out of telephone posts. But Terry, I'm sorry, I'm stealing your thunder. Take me through this first segment with these kids on the nail driving competition of our very first camp, because it was hysterical.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest issue I catch myself in it as either part of this camp or as an instructor is thinking, hey, these kids have had the same experience growing up as I did, right? No. I grew up with a hammer in my hand. My father was a cabinet maker. I was sweeping a shop floor. Like, free labor is free labor, even if it's not good, right? But these kids, if they get exposed to something new, right, they're going to like, hey, I've never done this. So you give I think we had probably 20 students in that room, maybe more. And we give them framing hammers, and thankfully they had their PPE on. But you see all these kids just like swinging these claw hammers all the way around. And you're like, this is not going to end good. Someone's going to smash a thumb or a finger, or, they're going to catch someone else.
It was complete chaos. But it was like the kids were into it.
Oh, yeah. And then you make a competition out of it, right? So you give them, 10 minutes of practice. You let them drive some nails, and then you make a competition out of it. They eat that up.
Yeah. It's like Fortnite in real life. They just gamified it. Bam.
Which is funny. It's like that's 7th and 8th graders, but that's like a lot of people in construction as adults. It's like, all right, how fast can you do that? Let's race. Who can dig this hole faster? Or like, who can install this faster? Let's go. So like, it's for life.
Yeah. Out of the 3 listeners, if you have stood on a roof line to extend your tape to see how far you could extend the tape before it breaks, please comment in this and just own it, because it exists. But you got to tell me the part where like the first thing, because I know that's ended up in a chainsaw out in the yard in the rain. Continue this. I'm going to.
So, you figure, hey, how many nails can a kid put in? And I think we're using at that point, they're like 10-inch, telephone pole sections, like, about 12 inches tall, and they're just driving it.
Terry did have a clever idea. He goes, if they finish and they get too many nails in the top, we'll just flip the telephone pole over. Pretty smart. I was like, damn, that's genius. But all right, go ahead.
That's why I got the big office, right? So they start driving all these nails, and eventually they're going to just fill up the end. And you flip it over, and they're going at it too. And next thing you know, they're taking the hammers and they're breaking the telephone base apart. And it's like, okay, let's switch to a competition.
Well, they realize there's another end of the hammer, which is a claw.
But no, there's nothing like improvising during the middle of a camp with, I think at that point we had probably about 50 kids, and so, hey, let's just get a chainsaw. I'm going to go cut some more sections.
It was raining the very first day of our very first camp.
So, but that was our first camp. Second camp was a lot more well-refined, a lot more fluid. Things ran a lot better. I think all the people involved had a lot less heart palpitations at that point in time. And we're ramping up for the third one. And, we keep asking, or we keep opening it up to more and more students, and more students keep showing up. And that's just great to see.
Yeah. And this is something that should go without saying, but individuals like Zach and DeLisi Concrete, you probably don't know who that is, listener, but has been a great dovetail of this. They're a masonry contractor, and they immediately have a masonry camp right after ours. And man, our students marry right into that. And Zach's just been a tremendous supporter of our camp, but he sees the value in it. And it's all these synergies that happen just because we're all just like, we all got dirt under our fingernails, and we just all want to have fun. Dylan, I got to tell you this. During the first camp, they did the nail driving competition. I'm going to circle back around. The kids discovered the claws in the hammer and realized, we can tear these telephone poles apart. So it was raining, and Terry comes up to me and says, we ran out of nail driving posts. And so I got to go cut posts. Can you distract the kids? And then I look out in the rain, and Dr. Ben Bigelow and Terry are out there getting drenched, cutting telephone posts. I'm surprised we didn't have a chainsaw class that first year, but it has been a load of fun. I mean, and honestly, OSU lets us tear their property apart. You guys have a lot that doesn't have any utilities in it, so we can do heavy equipment. I mean, by the way, what spawned that whole lot there with no utilities?
So what you're talking about is we let kids get in either a mini axe or 1 year of backhoe and full-size equipment, mind you, and just dig it up. And so we obviously call Okie and do a ground locate, so make sure we don't hit anything important, right? But that's where our lineman program, so we set poles, so we have the students setting poles or climbing. And so we have to have that large lot, and it's right there at Portland and 10th. So, I don't know how many thousands of vehicles pass by that place every day, but it's, you get out there and you see a 7th or 8th grade kid running a mini X and just digging up. And then I got to go to my boss, don't worry, I'll cover it up and compact it, and it will get fixed in 12 months, and then we'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, it works out. So, all right, Terry, we asked this question. I did read your answer in the pre-show kind of questionnaire. So me, actually, we've gotten to know each other really well. That I'm pretty braggadocious about my screw up. So what big screw up do you have that you could share with one of our 3 listeners that would prevent them from making the same mistake that you can at least have a little laugh about?
Other than access to a construction camp, their employer's property. No, I really thought you wanted to, you saw the quality education programs we had. You just saw us for a lot. I know it. No, so, I've screwed up a whole lot in my life. And as an instructor, that's one of the things. You get to talk about your screw ups, and you get to educate young people and make them feel better. So my wife and I, again, we have that real estate rental company that we do. And so we buy investment property. And so back in about 2012, we bought this wonderful buildable lot right 100 feet east of the Plaza District. right? And this is right before the Plaza District was getting really good. And for those of you who don't know, that's an area in Oklahoma City that's just gone through amazing revitalization.
Property values have skyrocketed. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Great. And so we're in the middle of designing a building that's going to go there, engage with an architect, had plan sets developed, went to the neighborhood association to get approval, and just met with resistance, right? And so this neighborhood, association's full of folks who've been in that neighborhood for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? And they have a vested interest in, and we're trying to put in a quality product, right? And they had trouble with the architectural metal roof. And I got just done, irritated, short fuse. And so at that point I was like, no, yeah, this neighborhood's not going to go anywhere. These people are never going to let anything good happen. I'm going to get out. And so we got out. And, like in business, we did fine. We didn't lose any money. We made money. And then I'm driving down it like a couple years later, and I look, and I see what was built. And so I pull up what it sold for that last time, just the bare land. That's not good. We did fine. We could have done a lot finer.
There's always lost opportunities. And for those that don't know, this specific area that we're talking about, Wayne Coit, I think is his name, main founding member of the Flaming Lips, lives in this neighborhood. So maybe you just didn't go with enough shrooms. You should have partaked in the local, activities, and then gotten along with the locals. You would have been fine. But
whatever's built there now, is it a metal roof?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, no.
Oh, that would be great.
Oh, no. Like you drive through that, I'm like, hey, our design looked like that, in that. Oh, no, it was amazing to see it's beautiful, that area, and the change that's gone through it, and the reinvestment in those neighborhoods. And then you think about how much money you lost out. And it's like, well, you live and you learn.
Well, that's all right. You escaped easily in the long term from Florida to Oklahoma City. So before we disembark on our next episode, we gotta talk about Dr. Ben Bigelow before we escape this episode. So, you're working with him. He's harping on you about this damn dissertation. So what do you got to say to Ben about this? Mind your own business? Is that what the kids say?
No. So it's hard. You can't throw much shade on your committee chair because.
Oh, oops. Hey, Drake, cut that part out.
No. Going through the PhD program down at OU has been an exceptionally enjoyable thing. I mean, I started it right before the pandemic. So, as everything else changed, that changed too. But no, the folks down at the OU construction program or construction science program, they can't say enough good things. I see a lot of my students that progress down to that pathway and then go in. But no, Ben Bigelow, it is a little disconcerting to hear your name called out on as you're standing in the middle of the Houston. Yeah, no, you don't want to be standing in the middle of the Houston airport listening to a podcast, with two guys, and then hear your name called out, and you're like, oh, son of a, not good.
It's all right. Now it goes both ways. Which, Ben doesn't read or listen to podcasts, right? By the way, love you, Ben, if you're listening, or one of your students. Hey, by the way, Ben, Terry, and I make a perfect trifecta. Terry is the blue-collar academic professor. Ben is very high-level, big picture. Let's build out many different careers all the way up to commercial engineering. And I'm the entrepreneur type. So it's I just want to jump off the cliff and figure it out on the way down. Us three in a conversation, we have so much fun. But through Ben in our previous episode, we had tons of comments from people that know him around the country. I'm sure we're going to have the same thing here. So, Terry, appreciate you being on another episode with us. which is just another week for us because we're just drinking beer, right, buddy?
Exactly. Good Friday.
Back to you, Dylan. Happy birthday, old man.
Yeah. Gonna enjoy it.
Oh, I forgot 2 things. We're repping up Brothers That Just Do Gutters on our koozies today. Good friends Eric and Brian Denaney are the local representatives or owners of our franchisee here. But Terry, how does somebody get a hold of you if they want to learn more about your program? Now that I know the surveying program is national, like how do we learn about this?
So just Google OSU-OKC construction. Any of those links are going to take you to us. So our Oklahoma State University, Oklahoma City University, and the construction program there, surveying program. We're a small school, so you'll be able to find us. Someone will give me up. I know that much.
Hey, listen, when people think of OSU, it's not a small school. Most people, when they think of OSU, they think about all the all-star athletes that came out of OSU. But now we're going to start to change that paradigm a little bit and be like, how many massive ultimate construction guys came out of that program? So, Terry, appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for being on another episode. To all the 3 listeners, because we're up to 3 now, Dylan, let's go. We are going to see you guys next week. Thanks for dealing with all of our baggy eyes and call it out of practice workshop techniques we're exercising today, but we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.